My father was killed December 23rd, 2004. He was traveling to the Atlanta airport to catch a flight up to visit my sister in Jersey for Christmas. He was doing that because my mom had died in July unexpectedly, and none of the four siblings wanted him to be by himself for Christmas. So we asked, where do you want to go? And he chose to fly up to Jersey. And his flight was scheduled very early in the morning, and so he was driving. He left at 4 in the morning, and he was driving, in those hours of early morning darkness. There was a fender bender ahead of him, and the freeway lane was closed. There were police and ambulance and every fire with the lights going, and everybody slowed down to get around that. They were being directed around that. Just a little fender bender. The semi that was in back of Dad, quite a ways back, didn't notice any of that. And as Dad was moving at 14 miles an hour, he was hit from behind by a semi going 65 or 70. He actually pushed Dad into a semi that was stopped in front, and then Dad bounced into the median and was partially ejected. And the driver of the semi in back of Dad jumped out and said he was sorry he had fallen asleep. We find out later that he had driven all night from Louisiana in order to get a load of electronics to Atlanta. You hear story after story after story of people stopped in traffic, hit from behind by a semi whose driver didn't notice what you and I would notice in a typical drive-in. And these are professional drivers, but they're working a lot of hours, sometimes over the number of hours that they should be working. You or I could not drive 11 straight hours without being tired, and you couldn't drive all night without being tired. But if you're incented to get a load somewhere, you might try to make that work, and it doesn't. My dad was a chemical engineer, and his whole life, he was 75 when he was killed. He retired at 65. They were world travelers. They traveled so much in those 10 years. But his whole career, he was a facilities manager in chemical plants. Those are inherently dangerous places. And if he knew, if some guy had come in and say, hey, there's an electrical cord that guys are tripping over, or there's something dripping from a pipe, or this machine is sounding funny, he wasn't going to say, well, whose fault is that? Maybe we should make a study. Let's think about maybe we should fix that. Let's send in paperwork. No, it was like, fix it now. We'll figure it out later. Fix it now. Yeah. Even at homeless kids growing up, it was like, fix it now. Don't mess around. I don't want the explanation. I just get it done. Yeah. So here I am trying to deal with government and agencies. I'm sitting in like a meeting with the Department of Transportation, and they're talking about, thinking about maybe sending out a memo just to announce that they're going to think about putting electronic on board, and then they're going to study it, and then they're going to get comments, and then they'll think about it some more, and then they'll decide. And I'm thinking, no, this is like a no-brainer. Let's just fix it. Every conference there are new families. We wish there weren't. But there are. There's families in the last 2 years are suddenly here, and they're as lost as we were in the beginning. And it makes me feel better to be able to say it's going to be all right. It's really bad right now. It will never be perfect, but it will get better. And I'm here to tell you, here's some things that you can do to make yourself feel better and to make sure that you feel like you're contributing, because that's one way to feel better. This was all almost 9 years ago. And so in the regular world out there, in my job and my other friends, they've all forgotten all about this, and it's, it was in the past and it should be done with, and they don't want to hear about it anymore. But the family still has this intense grief, and there's nowhere to talk about it without offending your other friends who are tired of hearing about it. So that's one of the big things, is that when you come to this conference, all the rest of the families understand that maybe it's 20 years ago, but you still need to talk about it. So it's a place to talk about it, and it's a place to bond, and it's a place to plan ways that we can make changes.